What's up, everybody? Your new stepdad here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down the 7 ultimates that you are absolutely terrible at using. You see, ultimates are some of the most powerful things that you could actually use in a round to turn around from a numbers disadvantage. So we're going to be breaking down the 7 most misused ultimates and give you some actionable tips about how to improve and pop off in your games. But the GameLeap website right now has a special 50% off special in our spring sale. On top of that, for a limited time offer, we're going to be randomly picking someone who either renews or subscribes using the spring discount code, and you're going to get a private coaching session with your boy Coach Mills. But enough about all of that, let's jump right into it. Now, kicking it off with the first ultimate that we got to talk about, and it's none other than Viper's Toxic Pit, which is going to be a really big one because Viper just got some freaking crazy buffs, but a lot of times people that have been using Toxic Pit have been using it really poorly. Now, the first thing that a lot of people are doing really wrong with Toxic Pit is actually using it too early when enemies just put a little bit of pressure on, especially when you're not holding the power positions of the map. Let's say you're playing Split, for instance, and you're holding A. Now, some people put a little bit of pressure, they might throw out a flash, you pop your Toxic Pit, and guess what? They all rotate the hell off. Now, that being said, it might be worth it to do that if you're controlling something like mid. You could Toxic Pit early, control mid, and now enemies literally can't push through that because you could be lurking somewhere in your Toxic Pit, and you're basically going to just completely deny them the ability to push this extremely powerful position. Now, a far more consistent way, honestly, to use Toxic Pit is combining it with your other abilities for a retake. You set yourself up with Toxic Orb or Toxic Screen to get as far on site as you can, and then use your Toxic Pit to either surround the spike or engulf it. This can also be used on attack as a way to use your Toxic Pit to route you onto site to plant a spike. There's a lot of really creative ways to use Toxic Pit. But one of the biggest mistakes that I really see with Toxic Pit a lot is where some Viper will rotate to another point, think they're safe, they won't clear anything, and they'll activate their Toxic Pit, and during the activation, they get killed. Make sure that you clear as many angles you possibly can so that you don't just get insta-killed and waste this really powerful ultimate. Now, next up, we gotta talk about Astra's Cosmic Divide, another character that's gonna see a giant increase in pick rate as she got a buff really recently, and she's been seeing quite a bit of pro play. Now, Cosmic Divide, everyone knows just how powerful this ultimate can be, but more often than not, it's freaking trash because people are using it incorrectly. Remember, enemies can still use your wall to their advantage, especially if you don't play around specific things from the enemy. Now, there are 2 really solid ways to use Cosmic Divide: to get a spike down or to get a defuse off and force enemies to contest. Either way, you're basically blocking off a part of the point. You're either blocking off the spike and defusing, or you're blocking off an area where you can plant. Now, it's incredibly important for you to understand that abilities, of course, can still go through your Cosmic Divide, and there's several really important ones that you need to look out for, specifically something like a recon arrow from Sova or just general flashes. So you always need to be ready for those flashes or ready to turn on them at a moment's notice, because as long as you're ready for that wall, if you have 3 eyes looking at that wall, for instance, even if they flash through, if you all turn, you all unturn, you're going to be able to kill that person even if they all push through simultaneously. Plus, the fact that the enemies can't really hear you very well means that it's going to be really hard for them to know the timing of when to push through. Now, next up, we got to talk about Skye's ultimate Seekers, which is actually a pretty powerful ultimate, but more often than not, it gets literally no value at all. You got to remember that the Seekers are incredibly easy to destroy, and typically you need to use Seekers to either make a play with them and use the Seekers themselves to be a distraction, or you just need to use the information provided to help you make a play. Now, something that you could actually do with Seekers, or something you should know about Seekers, is it's actually going to cut corners as quickly as possible. So if you use Seekers in a 1v1, right, it's going to cut that corner as quickly as possible. So if an enemy's around that corner, the enemy's crosshair is going to be closer to the wall. So if you wide swing out, you're going to be further than the Seeker, so they're not going to have their crosshair ready for you. And that could be a way where you send your Seekers out, the second you hear the firing, you wide swing, and then you get a free kill on the enemy. It's a really effective strategy for Seekers. Now, we're going to the next ultimate that I got to talk about in this video, and it's Omens ult From the Shadows. Now, From the Shadows is an extremely powerful ultimate, and a lot of you know how to use it for flanking the enemy, for instance, or just going and, you know, getting a plant down. Those are all really powerful things. but that's not what I'm going to talk about here. What I'm talking about specifically with Omen's ultimate is teleporting in a fight behind the enemy, like actively on point, and trying to make a play in that regard where you literally teleport behind the enemy. Now, this is why I think it's really important that when you teleport in, you're really paying attention to how much the enemies are distracted. Are they actively fighting someone, or does it just look like they're pretending to be distracted? They're looking away. The second you stick the ultimate, they're gonna flick to you and kill you, because it's sometimes pretty hard to know when you could just full stick that ultimate and just commit to that teleport and get a whole bunch of kills. On top of that, it is extremely good if you can time this with some sort of other action for your team, like a raise flying in, a jet flying in, ultimates being used by your allies as you teleport. And if enemies look on you and then your team engages, they're gonna assume a lot of the time that you're gonna actually cancel your ultimate because they're right there. Sometimes you can play off that perspective, but just remember, sometimes you're gonna get baited by the enemy as well. So just really look at what they're doing. How distracted are they? Are they firing their gun? Are they using their abilities? And you might find that opportunity. But remember, committing to a teleport proactively is always gonna be high risk, high reward, but sometimes you need that certain amount of risk, especially if the enemies are like on point and they're gonna defuse, or maybe you're in a 2v3 or 2v4 scenario. Connecting with a really high value, high risk, high reward play might be the way that you actually turn this round to your advantage and ultimately win it. Now, the next ultimate that we gotta talk about is none other than Sova's Hunter's Fury, an ultimate that a lot of pros think is legitimately one of the best, if not the best ultimates in the entire game. And there's a number of different reasons for that. First off, it's really good at countering another ultimate like a Killjoy's ultimate. That's the first thing. The second thing is, a lot of times it can get you a free kill if you just spam it where you know the enemies are playing default. You're gonna get damage on multiple people, and it's very easy to get a kill as well. And that is just amazing for an ultimate in the dark, just to get some value. Now, something that you should be doing with Sova's Hunter's Fury is at the tail end, let's say you pop your ultimate, you get 2 blasts off and you get a kill. You want to actually flick across the map and make sure that you are aiming at another default. This can be a way that you get some additional damage on an enemy that is lurking or the enemy team that is grouped up, and you can actually spam multiple areas on the map with your ultimate, especially if you lose someone or you kill them with that first blast. But also, a lot of times, if you have a really proactive rollout with your recon, you can fire off that recon, activate your ultimate early, and then just attack whoever is right there who gets tagged right away. Make sure that you put your crosshair placement kind of in the area that you think they're gonna be, so you have to move as little as possible, and you're right there ready to automatically do that first bit of damage, and typically, you're gonna secure a kill off the back of that as well. Now, the next ultimate that we got to talk about is Phoenix's Run It Back, an ultimate that is just amazing, especially in ranked play. Phoenix's Run It Back can just pop off and get you tons and tons of kills. However, sometimes people just don't get any kills with Phoenix's Run It Back at all. Now, simply due to the nature of Run It Back, a lot of times a weapon that you can be more mobile and is more forgiving with spray control, like the Phantom, is going to be better than something that you have to be really patient and diligent with, like the Vandal. That's just something that you should just keep in mind in general. But I think there's 2 big mistakes that people are making with Run It Back. The first one is they're not baiting out enough utility before they use Run It Back. A lot of times you could bait out tons of utility just poking around, clearing a corner with your utility, throwing your flame wall, spamming some damage, and you're gonna bait out a lot of these flashes. You're gonna bait out slows, a wall, different smokes. All these types of things are really good to bait out ahead of time so that you don't have to deal with them as you go in with your Phoenix Soul, and you're more likely to connect on some kills. Now, another thing that you can actually do is if an enemy smokes too aggressively, though, you can set up there as long as you baited out some amount of other utility, and then you pop your ultimate, you go into that smoke, instantly pop flash out of it, and then you push in. That could be a way that you use their smoke and just turn the tables on them, because Phoenix is extremely good at using enemy smokes to set up his engage, which is really, really good. And then the next big mistake that players are making using the Phoenix ultimate is they're using it in a way that enemies can just run away, right? You don't want to make it so that an enemy can kill your Phoenix's ultimate and then they just run up to your body and kill you, right? But the opposite can happen, and it does happen way too often, where enemies are not even close to committing. You're popping that ultimate way too far away, and you're never going to be able to catch them. They're just going to run away. They're going to run the hell back, and you're never going to be able to catch them, and you're basically just playing a chase game where there's no way you could possibly win that. Sometimes it's actually better to play in that little sweet spot where it's a little bit more higher risk. You know, there's one corner around and you pop a flash around that corner, you execute on them when they're pretty close. So even if they do turn on that flash, even if they do kill your Phoenix ultimate, by the time they get around that corner, you'll just be back in your buddy just in the perfect nick of time to be able to have another fight with the enemy. I know it's really appealing to have that big gap of distance where there's just no possible way that they come and kill your body after the fact, but finding that line where you can really get as close as possible so that they don't just run away from your ultimate is the #1 way to get more and more impact with it. Now, the last ultimate that we're going to talk about is actually Yoru's Dimensional Drift. Now, remember back in the old days when Dimensional Drift could body block? That was actually a legitimately powerful use of the ultimate, but you can no longer body block anymore. However, you could still distract enemies while someone else engages, and pinging and talking to your allies about where they are is still a very effective way to get kills as you distract them. Now, something about a recent buff to Yoru, though, is you pop out of Dimensional Drift a lot quicker. If you can time it correctly, if enemies are distracted a little bit, right? They're focusing on other people or they're firing their weapon in another direction where they would have to stop firing, find you, and then get that first shot accuracy again. You can typically pop out of the Dimensional Drift and already start shooting at them before they get to just pop you in the head. Now, you're going to be analyzing the enemy in a very similar way that I said to analyze with Omen's ultimate. However, the difference is if you stay far enough away from the enemy, they don't necessarily know that you're going to pop right in front of them in their LOS. And once they hear the pop, then they're going to turn on you. But if they were firing already, like I said, they have to, you know, get that first shot accuracy back. You're going to be able to fire pretty soon, only 0.6 seconds after the fact. And it's a really solid way to get a lot of kills on the ultimate, but you got to make sure that you get a feel for the time it takes to pop out and how much quicker it is now versus how slow it was before or how slow it felt before. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below right now for high quality in-depth guides at a fraction of the price with our 50% off spring sale. Do yourself a favor and get it right now for all the in-depth advanced guides, VOD reviews, and tips and tricks that you won't find anywhere else. But I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for coming by. I freaking love your faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.